Welcome to Wise Beyond Bitcoin, where you cover the crypto neo news, education, and opportunities. My name is Lucas.
My name is Ryan.
My name is Jacob.
And we've got some news and education and maybe some opportunities for some people out there for sure. This is an update on what's going on around the world, a macro geopolitical outlook on the Russian-Ukraine news, as well as how that's going to impact the financial traditional markets, as well as the blockchain crypto markets. And maybe this new technology, we've talked about mutual aid groups for a long time, Ryan. I know we've mentioned the possibilities, and now the world is seeing many new use cases for Bitcoin or blockchain crypto in general. So living in some very exciting times. We've got a balance of news on the traditional and news on this new tech and maybe how they interact. So,
it's interesting. We're seeing crypto help to decentralize, finance and governance and medical records and, all kind of ownership, titles to ownership and deeds, and maybe potentially, identification, and, all kinds of cool things are being decentralized. But now we're seeing that, wow, even war is taking a decentralized form in this modern era. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting and noteworthy, right?
Absolutely. And this new technology is already being used. And you're seeing support worldwide for supplies and donations. And what else is going on with the market? Can you say why?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Looks like we are barely making up for a dump today. What's that all about?
Yeah, so we could have macro outlook video last night, and before we woke up, the narrative had shifted on us, as it happens so often in the fast-paced world we live in, with war and financial. And all kinds of financial craziness. So yeah, what happened is there was a shelling of a nuclear power plant. The Russians were shelling Europe's largest power plant in the Ukraine, and they took it over. Now they control it, and this was definitely spooked markets. Immediately you started seeing crypto selling off, and it still is broadly in the red today. And of course, traditional markets sold off on the news, and they've kind of retraced a little bit and are more or less flat for the day. But yeah, this is the narrative. This is the story. It's definitely something that raises the hair on your neck, right? When you hear about a shelling of a nuclear power plant, and you think about Chernobyl and maybe some of the history in this region with nuclear disasters, and it's like, wow, this is, what more can we add to this situation to make it fearful and scary?
The good news is, according to the news, that there's no safety. Nothing was damaged that would jeopardize the safety. It says does not affect the safety of the power unit. So whatever shelling was done was hopefully not many nobody was injured, and it was a show of force so that it could be taken over with the least amount of damage necessary. And so far, the news is that there's no radiation or power leak or any catastrophic damage. It's not like a Chernobyl incident. It's just a major key target that looks to be strategically in, there's another article, but in this new game of, seems like geopolitical, this risk that's being happening in front of the world's eyes, that this will be another takeover for Russia. And
yeah,
there's another article.
I think the idea would be to cut. I think they're looking at perhaps being able to cut the energy off to large parts of urban areas, and prior to the full-on force moving in with the tanks and the troops, and kind of soften the targets up a little bit with some darkness for a few days, and then I think that's the idea here, but that's speculation. So
yeah. I'm just reading from later on this article. It says the Russians announced the capture of the southern city of Kherson, a vital black seaport. I'm sure I mispronounced that name. Of 280,000, and local Ukrainian officials confirmed to take over the government headquarters there, making it the first major city to fall since the invasion began a week ago. So you've got that major city falling, and now you've got this airstrike on the power plant, leaving the city without heat or electricity, like you said. I'm not sure where this is going. Hopefully it resolves soon and quickly with no more people having to be hurt a
I think
lost life.
something that was interesting to mention in that article, if you actually scroll down really quick, if you notice where they were actually saying that information was on Telegram, which is supposed to be this messaging app a lot of times that is used for either peer-to-peer connections or even crypto. And I think it just goes to show that the telecommunications in the Ukraine is definitely, and information is definitely going to be a big, big part about this conflict. And I think that's why it's so important that things like altered app exists to be able to get those communications out to people in a truly decentralized way, in a speedy way.
Good point. I'm looking for it. I did see it mentioned Telegram, and I have spoken.
There
in
it
the
is.
crypto community. There we go. I have listened to other people in the crypto community from that part of the world explain that Telegram is one of the main, that's how most people communicate. That's one of the main resources. So recognizing that it's centralized and how some of these things can be shut down or compartmentalized in real quick, alter what that technology, what that offers, just as we're seeing how Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is allowing people to exchange value during these times when typically being able to send payments or cross borders and information would be very difficult and could be cut off. Blockchain crypto is allowing this to continue despite what's going on. And like you're saying, Jacob, when that can happen from communications on Telegram, Alter is a blockchain version of a technology that could also allow facilitation of communication to happen. So of course, with privacy as well. Now, okay, we've got what's going on in the market. There's the nuclear attack, which obviously the market responded to. And because of the news that there's not too much damage, it's taking control and there's starting to be a bit of a rebound. It hasn't completely made up for the losses this morning. The Dow, it's still down a bit on the NASDAQ and the S&P as well. Hasn't caught up completely, but it's starting to respond with a little bit of positivity. I'm presuming that's because the report that there wasn't that much damage and it's not going to be some catastrophic.
It's contained.
But there are repercussions, and there are repercussions that Russia is facing economically worldwide that can affect the value of the dollar. And we talk about liquidity and DeFi all the time and how new protocols are trying to merge liquidity or solve problems with venture capitalists or whales ripping liquidity out and having thin liquidity. So liquidity and lack of liquidity is not just something that you run into in blockchain and crypto. This is something that can cause problems or direct action in traditional markets as well. Is that right?
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And much of what we see in the DeFi world is just a recreated version, an analog version or digital version or whatever, however you want to think of it, is of what exists in the traditional world, right? So yeah, the same problems and concerns would be there. This is an interesting article, and it's something to consider. So the point here is that the sanctions are freezing large amounts of Russian foreign exchange, which means that their ability to sell their currency and to acquire funding or sell other foreign exchange holdings they have in other countries and to turn that into their own currency, that's stopped. That's not happening. That trade's no longer open for them. So they're stuck with a bunch of foreign exchange that's basically frozen. And the big idea here is to freeze Russia out of the Western markets of moving capital and money and credit. And one of the big concerns, or one of the big elements in this story about national reserve currencies deals with, well, what would replace the dollar? Say for example, Russia said, okay, we're going to take these sanctions on the chin, and instead of doing what the West wants, we're just going to turn to China, and we're going to turn to our own allies, and like whether it be India or China or Iran, and we're going to create some kind of a currency block, and we're going to compete against the dollar and have our own internal system. Well, that's been a story that we've discussed. That's been a part of our discussion over the years, is like what happens when the dollar no longer has this status of being a reserve currency, and what happens to those dollars when they flood back domestically. And so that's been a big fear about this inflation that could potentially happen as all that foreign held money comes home, right? And the idea, one of the big unspoken or unsaid responses that should mitigate this risk, and we're seeing it here, is that the Chinese monetary system is not designed or set up to be an international reserve currency. And the reason is surrounding their capital controls. And I don't want to get too deep into the economics. We've done a video. We actually did a video on this about a month or two ago on these issues. But essentially, what's going on with the capital controls is that when you have capital controls, there's very little money that you're going to let your domestic users exchange and convert into a foreign currency so they can go invest in other markets. You're building walls. You control the capital, keep it at home, and what that means is there's very little of the renminbi available in international markets to serve as foreign exchange. So even if people wanted to use the Chinese currency as their foreign exchange, the lack of liquidity, given the capital controls, would make that impossible. And that's not going to. And then you look at the next trading partners, whether it's Iran, and you can think, okay, obviously they don't have an economy that's going to be able to support the kind of liquidity that a modern nation is going to need to access in order to sustain their payments, their cross-border payments, right? It's just not going to work. And so that's what this article is about. We'll link it in the description. But essentially what we're seeing is that this strengthens the dollar's position, and we're seeing a stronger position for the dollar going forward, given these capital controls and the sanctions.
So this, all of this coming together, and the fragile state the U.S. dollar and the Fed's been in with trying to keep the economy healthy, and that tightrope of interest rates and the supply shock that's happened in the world lately. This is something that could add a little electric energy, a little juice to the strength of the dollar right now moving forward, and push a little bit more energy behind the Fed and what they can do, I suppose, for a little bit longer. I mean, we've already seen early on when we were all announcing and everyone was being prepared for all these rate hikes, and we're already seeing, we don't have to do nearly as much as we thought we were going to do. We're already cutting it back by 50 basis points, and
or a quarter. Yeah, a quarter.
A quarter, right. And so
from 50. Yep.
We're already seeing a strengthening dollar. I mean,
yeah.
So. And
so the fundamentals kind of support that narrative, right? And it goes against your intuition if you're following the Fed and you watch M1 or M2 or any these categories of monetary growth, and you're looking at that and thinking, oh wow, the dollar's done. Maybe not. Maybe it's more complicated than that.
Well, it definitely is. When you look at what we talked about, we recently did a video about the value, the point of that Schiff-Hart debate, and getting to the crux of what is value and what is money. And at the end of the day, what is money is what people are accepting and what you can get for it. And out there in the world market with liquidity issues and what's being accepted, there's clearly a dominant currency at the moment.
Yeah.
So
that's right. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the future will always look that way, right?
No, and it doesn't mean that there aren't steps being taken to kind of break that hegemony and decentralize it. And we're seeing it happen. And we're watching blockchain and crypto start to play a role in national economies and worldwide economies, already breaking down these borders, breaking down the idea. Yeah. And
well, that's a good segue, because I shared a tweet on Twitter. And before we jump into this article, but it's the same topic, so that's why I want to segue. I shared a tweet on Twitter by a Ukrainian who was living abroad, and he tweeted out that it's because of his ETH and Bitcoin and NFT holdings that he's not completely screwed, because all of his property, his home, everything that he has back in Russia is now collapsed in value, right? If you had if you had stocks there, in Russian indexes or whatever, Russian holdings, those are worth a lot less now. Yeah, the ability to get your money out of the bank, very difficult. The value of the money, if you do get it out, is dropped 90%. Right. The home, so everything's changing for him, and he obviously doesn't want to go back. And he's got these keys that have that has this wealth tied to it, and that's his lifeboat. And so I thought, wow, that's an amazing example of just the kind of harmonious solutions from new technologies, emerging technologies that we've always been talking about, and how they can empower people and disempower maybe institutions that aren't serving our needs.
I
So
mean,
yeah,
think about that.
beautiful
Your
outcome.
family, your home being shelled and bombed, and you have to take everything you can to keep your family alive and escape to safety, and whatever you can take with you is all that you have. I mean, even if you had a bunch of gold bars, you know, how many can you fit in your pockets? Then you have to be careful, you know, out there in the world protecting it. You're no longer in the safety of your home with the safe. So when people, whether it's jewelry or bank accounts they can't take, this new offers a new solution. It's a completely new paradigm, and individuals being able to protect themselves from geopolitical risks, right, in the system.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And that being said, Ukraine is spending crypto donations. So here is an example of that, and mutual aid groups, how people are able to, from around the world, without having to have a bank account with Ukraine. Think about this, 10, 20, 30 years ago. I mean, maybe even a year, 2, 3 years ago, but you would have to have some type of an account with a national government or local or some way to send through SWIFT or some payment intermediary in order to send something of value,
helps
money, to support a group. And the pink elephant in the room about how Ukraine is spending crypto donations is the fact that crypto donations are donations that can have been sent from people in countries all over the world. There are people around the world right now, they're like, oh, I want to support this cause, and I can send Bitcoin or Dash or Ethereum or Secret or whatever, you know, go down the list. We don't know. I don't know all that they're accepting, but if it's through an exchange, then I'm sure they're accepting many different types of cryptocurrencies. This is cool. Jacob, do you know?
Jacob didn't. Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah,
Jacob brought this to our attention.
If you scroll down a little bit, it actually talks about the exchange that they're using right there, Kuna.
It slowed
We
down.
just lost Jacob.
Yeah,
there we go.
Go back to Hakuna Matata.
So Kuna is the exchange that the Ukraine is using kind of as their bank at this point. And so Kuna is this exchange where all of the value in crypto is being utilized. And you can see here that Kuna.io is providing technical support for the Ukrainian fundraisers. A Kuna spokesperson told me in email on Monday, all funds are safe and being directed for government needs as requested. But once funds are uploaded to an exchange, they become harder to track and trace. And that's why they've asked several questions to the Kuna founder. He told me that about Kuna's role in the crypto donation setup and the Ukrainian government's motivations. And so you could actually see recently created Twitter account. And one of the interesting things is that Twitter is one of those social media that has a language barrier for Ukrainian. So it's not typically used in that area. It's more like in the English speaking world application, similar to how WeChat is more to the Asian nations, and to each their own. We all have language barriers. But I think it's something that's very interesting that you can see that they're trying to bridge that language barrier to seek the donations and the help and effort of world efforts, of decentralized efforts of people.
You know what? I had to say something. I find it ironic, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. This is not a criticism, but I find it ironic that one of the best uses cases for crypto right now is to send your money to a government.
Oh man,
it's not lost on me. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. It is ironic because the whole goal of crypto was to be able to, in a sense, like decentralize like the markets. But now what it's allowing us to do is really let your money and your buying power be the thing to be able to help nations that are in states of conflict, to be able to help people who are in these nations that are in states of conflict.
I think you brought up a good point. The goal is really, there is no goal of crypto because there are individuals with all different sorts of ideologies and goals and beliefs. And at the end of the day, I think the technology, what many people appreciate is the decentralized security. It's not as fragile as old systems of security, which is a plus. And the preventing of it's the risk, having that decentralized security kind of tied to that is allowing whoever the owner of the keys that control and that power without the corruption, the counterfeit, or the influence of some random arbitrary third party. So staying true to those principles, it's never, from my understanding, it's been a pro make the world a better place, never an anti anything. So
Right.
I think this is beautiful opportunity to show that many people who have crypto are taking whatever they've been able to benefit from supporting the new growth of this new technology.
Yeah.
They're taking a lot of that value and they're donating it to causes that they support that right now are being held through government. But who knows, maybe in the future there are more decentralized way of providing services for protection or different mutual aid groups for areas. And right,
well, it's one thing that I'm glad you brought that up, because this is kind of inching toward that idea of people funding the kind of defense services that align with their values, right? That we've talked about that for years before crypto even existed. And now we're seeing that, hey, there's a pathway, there's a way to coordinate in a way that wouldn't have existed without the blockchain. Like, it'd be very hard. I mean, you're going to go to your Bank of America and say, hey, I need to send this to the government in Ukraine. They're going to look at you and be like, well, I need an account number,
right,
like try to coordinate that. It would be difficult,
right.
but this is showing how a bottom up horizontal coordination effort can be bootstrapped through technology.
And we can see here that even the supplies that they are purchasing, like for my fund, we are buying drones, we are buying petrol, we are feeding people, we are paying for transport to evacuate people out of the most dangerous places. And you could see that at the bottom paragraph right there. Right up.
Oh, I see it. Right here.
No, little higher.
Oh, this
For
bottom
my
paragraph.
yeah. There
Gotcha.
we go. For my funds, we were buying drones. We are buying petrol, feeding people, and you can see that, like they are
Evacuating
supplying
Yeah.
regular people who come out and get guns, and they're doing that to be able to have those people defend themselves in a situation where they are in a conflict zone. A lot of these people, they don't have the choice to be able to, get out of these situations and leave. And I think there's a really good quote from Winston Churchill that I'd like to stay. To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do something very special, something unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or underqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. And
that's a good one.
I think it applies so much to the situation with Ukraine and being able to really rise up and do the courageous thing and help out in these conflict areas, and using the privileges we have being outside of this conflict zone to be courageous, to do something, to be able to help these people who quite honestly just don't have the options to do anything other than the courageous thing.
They're in need of help for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, this next article is, I think, a great example of the kind of unorthodox, creative, help that's possible now in the modern world that, would have been like, this is almost like hard to believe this is happening. Really, when we go through the story and talk about what's involved here, I mean, it's cool, it's awesome, but it's hard to believe that this is even an option, and it is. And that's what's so cool about it. So what's going on? If you've heard of Anonymous, they're a hacking collective, very famous. They've done a lot of cool stuff over the years to support various good causes. I'm not going to try. You can make up your own mind on them, but they're a hacking collective, and they have acquired a large amount of Russian ruble through a hack, and they've converted that into Bitcoin, and they're offering a bounty, and they're going to pay Russian troops who are in the Ukraine around $52,000 for every tank they give up, and the payment will be in Bitcoin. So that's interesting and novel, and definitely unorthodox. Imagine paying a military with their own money for their troops to desert and take their equipment with them. And then there's a way to actually get that payment to that person, which is even crazier, in a war zone.
Now,
So it's like, it's cool.
As an aside from a military perspective, as a way to decentralize, but also to maintain support to a nation, that's always been, I thought, novel. An idea was to allow troops, instead of to centralize them to areas, to allow people to go home to their communities and allow communities to have their own support. It would be more robust instead of these centralized systems that you have to rely on. But here you see a natural decentralization where you're seeing troops being able to take the equipment and be compensated for taking it off. It's kind of like a natural disarmament. We're seeing this disarmament take place and decentralization of the security.
Makes you wonder how many Bitcoin we need to offer for the dudes at the helm of the nuclear weapons in Russia. Can we offer you a deal maybe too,
Well, if you think about this, if outposts throughout towns and nations had small military outposts where people could just go be part of the community, a lot of the training that's done on these tanks or all these other equipment could be taken back on a small scale to be maintained and kept. And in that regard, as far as an attack happening in theory from outside aggressive forces, if you had a whole nation that was kind of armed and trained versus certain key areas, then it would make it.
Well, they could coordinate. They would coordinate their activity, of course. It'd scale up when you fight
and you allow those small communities to have more say and control, and it would prevent some of the issues that you normally get with the decisions being made from centralized. Yeah, well, the decisions would be way more responsive to the people. Sure, because they'd be made by people closer to the people on the ground, right? It'd be like a state-based, community-based, city, county, however it would be designed. It'd be on a much smaller scale than what some big, national jurisdiction has in mind. And we can even see how this is a good example, but how people could fund. You were mentioning this earlier. If people have funded directly those systems that they wish to support, then we would also see a natural disarmament, maybe less aggressive actions being funded because the resources wouldn't be there. You don't have as many people that would want to see that happen. So it would kind of fall apart on its own. Yeah, you'd have to be able to fund the invasion of that other nation, and who wants to pay for that? Maybe a few, but enough to get the job done. Probably not. Now we talk about, like, you think about war and this technology, but Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain technology often moves very, very fast in different sectors. And much like when you go to a NASA example in Houston, or you look at an old space shuttle that was used for the 1969 event, you look at the computing technology that was used, and it's, the computers back then did not have near the power as a modern iPhone or an Android phone has. So the idea that a lot of these decisions being made by warlords, there is a fragility in the world right now with computers and computing technology, and the 52,000 Bitcoin being offered isn't the only, I don't want to say threat, but it's not the only action that Hackers Anonymous have. Deterrence. I think they mentioned if there's a considered aggression continues and loss of life and the war continues to worsen, that there unprecedented cyber attacks from all corners of the globe would continue to, help disarm, impact, support, the ending of this. So interesting. And I love to see the role. Go back to that last bit. There's one more thing we got to touch on. The Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has reportedly stated that it will grant amnesty to Russian forces surrendering. There you go. So that shows you, which is on the side of civilization and peace, and who's on the side of chaos and violence. Yeah, one group says if you come over here, amnesty automatic. And if you bring a tank, amnesty plus Bitcoin in your name.
Plus a year,
man.
over a year's worth of salary for some of these people.
And
you
maybe we
know?
can get a year of Ultra Mail. Can we get that going too?
We'll reach out and send some messages around, and it might possibly come. It might even possibly come with a year subscription. You know what? Maybe even a life. If you can take a tank peacefully and come over across, and you know what?
And surrender.
That's a good argument for a lifetime subscription of Ultra. I'll put in a good word for you. I don't have that kind of power or say, but I'll do it anyway.
Me neither.
We'll
put that out into the universe, and we'll see if it gets picked up.
I can definitely put that message like in the areas where it will be read.
Yeah,
I think that would be so important too, because in the Ukraine in general, like we're going to have this problem with communications, and what better way to communicate with your family as someone who's a Russian, who's deserting, who may be concerned, than a truly private service.
Right. Oh yeah, I mean, the need for that is going to be huge. I've always said that the need for privacy, while we understand it in the Western world, you know, very intimately because of how many threats to our privacy exist, when you go to parts of the authoritarian world, it becomes a whole different question. It's orders of magnitude more important, and especially in wartime, of course. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Let's put that out there. See what happens.
We'll see what happens. And if you want to see what happens, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Hope you enjoy this little macro update, a look at what's going on in the geopolitical world and its effect in the traditional markets, as well as the crypto markets. Of course, if you're just getting started with blockchain and crypto, we've got playlists to get you going, how to start your crypto journey, secret NFTs, the role that privacy as a foundation, layer one solution, how big that is. And right now, you know, we've got more videos to make, but the IBC in general, just did another video on the EVMOS airdrop. IBC, when the rest of the markets are consolidating and correcting and bearish, you're finding Juno, Osmosis hitting all-time highs, a lot of record development on Secret Network with secret NFTs, Alter Mail, which we just mentioned, Jackal DAO and Shade and Silk. So much innovation and exciting things are happening right now in blockchain and crypto. We talk about a lot of it, airdrops, free giveaways, and other things, DeFi explainers, tutorials, all right here. Check it out. You know what to do. Until the next time, have a beautiful day, and namaste, y'all.
Thank you.
Later.